was lying in my hospital bed at Sunnybrook in Toronto, my chest monitor beeping steadily, when my phone lit up with an Instagram notification. My grandson, Marcus's wife, Elena, had just posted a photo. My hands were shaking as I opened it, not from my supposed heart condition, but from pure rage. There she was, Turks and Caicos, crystal blue water behind her, a cocktail in one hand, and her other arm wrapped around some man I'd never seen before. Designer sunglasses. That smile. The caption read, "Living my best life. Sometimes you just need to let go and live. Number no regrets. Number blessed life." I'd been in this hospital for 3 days. My cardiologist had told Marcus the prognosis was grim. Hours, maybe days. Marcus had called Elena immediately, begging her to come. She'd said she was on a work trip in Montreal, closing a major deal. Absolutely couldn't get away. She'd promised to fly in the moment it was done. She'd sent flowers. She'd posted a heartfelt story on Instagram about how hard it was to be away from family during difficult times. But she wasn't in Montreal. She was in the Caribbean, with another man, while her husband sat in the cafeteria downstairs, exhausted and terrified, thinking his wife was working herself to death trying to get back to Toronto. My nurse, Patricia, came in to check my vitals. She glanced at my face and frowned. "Mr. Holloway, your blood pressure just spiked. Are you in pain?" "No," I managed. "Just angry." "Well, anger isn't good for your heart. Try to relax." She adjusted my IV and left. But I couldn't relax, because 20 minutes later, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Holloway, don't tell Marcus about Elena's location. Meet me at your Muskoka cottage tomorrow morning. Come alone. This is about your grandson's life." I stared at that message for a long time. The cottage. Nobody knew about that place except family. We'd kept it private after my wife Helen died 15 years ago. It was our sanctuary on Lake Rousseau, a 2-hour drive north of Toronto. Marcus and I would go there to fish, to drink beer on the dock, to escape the noise of the city. How did this person know about the cottage? I looked around my private room. The machines, the tubes, the hospital gown. I'd checked myself in 3 days ago complaining of chest pains. The doctors had run every test. EKG, blood work, cardiac imaging. Everything came back concerning enough to keep me for observation, but not critical enough for surgery. The truth was, I'd lied about the severity of my symptoms. I'd exaggerated, because 2 weeks ago, I'd found something in Marcus's condo that had shaken me to my core, and I'd needed time to think. I'd needed to see how people would react if they thought I was dying, especially Elena. She'd failed the test spectacularly. I pressed the call button. Patricia returned. "I need to check myself out," I said. "Mr. Holloway, the doctor hasn't cleared you yet." "I'm checking myself out, AMA. Against medical advice. I'll sign whatever forms you need." She looked concerned, but nodded. "I'll get the paperwork." An hour later, I was in my truck, a 2015 Ram 1500, with 200,000 kilometers on it. I'd told Marcus I needed to go home and rest, that the hospital was making me anxious. He'd wanted to drive me, but I'd insisted I was fine. The look of relief on his face when I said I was feeling better nearly broke me. He had no idea what his wife was really doing. I took Highway 400 north. It was late October, and the trees along the highway were already bare, their branches like skeletal fingers against the gray Ontario sky. Tim Hortons cups and gas receipts littered my passenger seat. The radio played CBC, but I wasn't listening. I was thinking about Marcus, my grandson, the only family I had left after Helen and my son Thomas died. Thomas had been killed in a mining accident 12 years ago, a cave-in up in Sudbury. Marcus had been 20 then, studying finance at Western. I'd helped raise him after that, paid for his education, watched him graduate, get his CFA, land a job at a wealth management firm on Bay Street. 3 years ago, he'd met Elena at an open house in Yorkville. She was a real estate agent, beautiful, charming, ambitious. They'd married after 8 months. I'd had my doubts, but Marcus was so happy. And I'd thought, maybe I'm just being an overprotective grandfather. Maybe I'm seeing problems that aren't there. But 6 months ago, Marcus had asked to borrow $200,000. said he and Elena were investing in a pre-construction condo development in Mississauga. The returns were supposed to be incredible. I'd said yes, because I trusted him. I'd transferred the money. Then, 2 weeks ago, I'd stopped by his condo, unannounced. He was at work, but I had a key. I'd gone to drop off some documents he needed to sign for my estate planning. That's when I'd found the folder. It was in Elena's home office, a manila folder with Lakeview Properties Limited, written on the tab. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold. The development in Mississauga didn't exist. The company didn't exist. Elena had created fake incorporation papers, fake architectural renderings, fake everything. My $200,000 had been transferred to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the life insurance policy. $5 million on Marcus, with Elena as the sole beneficiary. Taken out 4 months ago without Marcus's knowledge, forged signature, paid for with money from the fake investment scheme. I'd photographed everything. Then I'd put it all back exactly as I'd found it, and I'd started planning. The hospital admission had been my idea. I needed to create a crisis, to see how Elena would respond. Would she rush to her dying grandfather-in-law's bedside? Would she support her husband through his grief? Or would she see it as an opportunity? She'd seen it as an opportunity. The Instagram post proved it, but that text message changed everything. Someone else knew something. Someone who knew about the cottage. I reached Gravenhurst around noon. The tourist season was over, the streets quiet. The fall colors were gone, leaving everything gray and brown. I stopped at a gas station to fill up and use the washroom. When I came out, I noticed a car that had been behind me for the last 20 kilometers. A black Audi sedan with tinted windows. It pulled into the gas station but didn't stop at a pump, just parked near the edge of the lot. My instincts from 40 years in the mining industry kicked in. Safety training, threat assessment. I'd worked in some dangerous places, Northern Ontario, the Northwest Territories, even a few months in South America. I knew when something felt wrong. I got back in my truck and continued north toward Port Carling, watching my rearview mirror. The Audi followed at a distance. The cottage was another 15 minutes down a private road, barely maintained, just gravel and potholes through thick forest of pine and birch. I turned onto it, and the Audi didn't follow. Maybe I'd been paranoid. The cottage appeared through the trees. A sprawling cedar-sided bungalow with a metal roof and a stone chimney. My grandfather had built it in 1968. I'd spent my summers here as a kid, fishing for muskie and swimming off the dock. Helen and I had renovated it in the 90s. After she died, I couldn't bring myself to sell it. There was a car in the driveway, a silver Honda Civic. Someone was inside. I parked and sat for a moment. The message had said to come alone. What if this was a trap? What if Elena had discovered I knew about her scheme and this was her way of getting rid of me too? But I'd come this far. I got out of the truck. The air smelled like wood smoke and decaying leaves. The lake was visible through the trees, gray and choppy. Before I could knock, the front door opened. A young woman stood there, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was wearing jeans and a Toronto Raptors hoodie. Her face was familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Mr. Holloway," she said. "Thank you for coming. I'm sorry about the cryptic message. My name is Vanessa Paxton. I was engaged to Jordan Kemp." Jordan Kemp. The name hit me like a punch. I knew that name. Marcus had mentioned him, a colleague at his firm. They'd worked together on client portfolios. "Was engaged?" I said. "He died 3 months ago. Car accident on the DVP. His Mazda went off the overpass near the Bloor exit. Single vehicle collision. The police ruled it brake failure combined with driver error." Her voice was steady but strained. "But it wasn't an accident, Mr. Holloway. Your grandson's wife had him killed." The world tilted. I reached out to steady myself against the doorframe. "You need to explain that statement. Come inside. I'll show you everything." The cottage interior smelled like cedar and old memories. Vanessa had made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Helen and I had played cards for 40 years. She opened her laptop. Jordan worked with Marcus at Sterling Wealth Management. They shared some clients. About a year ago, Elena approached Jordan. She wanted him to help her set up offshore accounts. Said it was for legitimate tax planning for her real estate business. Jordan was a finance guy. He knew the rules. He helped her establish accounts in the Caymans, all legal, all above board. She pulled up bank statements on her screen. But then Elena started using those accounts for something else. She was running an investment fraud scheme, convincing people, mostly older clients through Marcus's firm, to invest in fake development projects. She'd take their money, move it offshore, and it would disappear. Jordan figured it out about 6 months ago. Did he go to the police? He tried. But Elena had covered her tracks well. She'd forged documents, used shell companies, made everything look legitimate. Jordan didn't have enough concrete proof. So he started gathering evidence. He told me he was close to having everything he needed. She paused. Then his brakes failed on the DVP. You think Elena sabotaged his car? I know she did, because after Jordan died, I found his backup files. He'd hidden them in our apartment, encrypted on an external drive. He'd documented everything, the fraud scheme, the offshore accounts, the victims, and he'd found something else. She turned the laptop toward me. The life insurance policy on Marcus. There it was. $5 million. Forged signature. But there was more. Emails between Elena and someone named D.K., discussing the timeline and making it look natural. References to the break line method worked before. Should work again. D.K.? I asked. Derek Kane. He's Elena's ex-boyfriend from Vancouver. He works in automotive repair. Or he did before he moved to Toronto 6 months ago. Now he runs a mobile mechanic service. Very convenient for accessing vehicles in parking garages. My hands were shaking. You're telling me Elena had your fiancé killed and she's planning to kill my grandson? Yes. And when I found this evidence, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. Elena has connections. Jordan had mentioned she was paying off someone in the Toronto Police Service Fraud Division. I didn't know who to trust. She looked at me directly. Then I saw on Marcus's Facebook that you were in the hospital. I saw Elena's post about being in Montreal for work, and I remembered Jordan mentioning your cottage. He'd been here once with Marcus for a fishing weekend. He'd told me about it, said it was completely off-grid, no digital footprint. So you texted me. I needed someone who couldn't be compromised. Someone who loved Marcus enough to act. Someone Elena wouldn't see coming. She closed her laptop. Mr. Holloway, I've been watching Elena for 3 months. I know her patterns, her contacts, her methods, but I can't take her down alone. I need your help. I stood and walked to the window. The lake was barely visible through the trees, a gray expanse that had witnessed so much of my life. Helen and I had sat on that dock watching sunsets. Thomas had learned to swim off that shore. Marcus had caught his first fish from that dock. What's Elena's timeline? I asked. Soon. Your hospital admission spooked her. She knows you've been involved in Marcus's finances. She probably thinks you might discover the fraud scheme. She needs to move fast. Kill Marcus. Collect the insurance. Disappear before anyone can untangle the offshore accounts. The Caribbean trip? Establishing an alibi. She'll make sure there are plenty of photos, social media posts, credit card receipts showing she was out of the country when Marcus dies. Derek will handle the actual mechanics. Probably another car accident. Maybe a home invasion gone wrong. I turned back to face her. Do you have all of Jordan's evidence? Everything. Bank records, emails, victim statements, the insurance policy documents, everything. And you're sure we can't trust the Toronto police? Jordan's notes indicated Elena made payments to a detective sergeant named Graham Morrison in the fraud division. I verified it. Morrison's bank deposits don't match his salary. He's bought a vacation property in Collingwood in the past year. Cash purchase. Then we go over his head. OPP has an organized crime unit. I know someone there. John Chen. We served together on a mining safety board 20 years ago. He's straight as an arrow. I pulled out my phone. We need to set a trap. Vanessa leaned forward. What kind of trap? Elena thinks I'm dying. She thinks she has time. We use that. I go back to Toronto, play the sick grandfather. But we document everything. We get her to incriminate herself. We get Derek on tape discussing the murder plan. And when we have enough evidence that even a corrupt cop can't bury it, we spring it all at once. That's risky. If she realizes you're onto her, she won't, because she thinks she's smarter than everyone else. That's her weakness. Pride. I called John Chen, told him I had information about a major fraud and murder conspiracy. He agreed to meet me the next day. Off the books. At a Tim Hortons in Barrie, neutral territory. Vanessa and I spent the next 3 hours going through every detail of Jordan's files. The fraud was even more extensive than I'd realized. Elena had stolen over $2 million from 11 different victims over the past 18 months. Older people, mostly. Clients of Marcus's firm who trusted his recommendations. Elena would charm them, convince them to invest through her real estate connections, and the money would vanish offshore. Jordan had documented everything. Account numbers, transfer dates, forged contracts. He'd even recorded phone conversations with one of Elena's victims, an 82-year-old widow named Dorothy Chen who'd lost her entire retirement savings. Did Elena know Jordan had all this? I asked. She must have suspected. Jordan had been asking too many questions at work. Marcus had mentioned it to Elena, said Jordan was acting paranoid about some client accounts. That's probably what prompted her to act. And Derek just happened to become a mobile mechanic right when she needed someone to sabotage vehicles. They've been planning this for a while. I found emails between them going back 2 years, before she even met Marcus. They were looking for a mark, someone wealthy, someone trusting. Marcus was perfect. The rage I felt was cold and pure. This woman had targeted my grandson, had married him with the intention of killing him, had stolen from vulnerable seniors, had murdered an innocent man who'd tried to stop her. When I'm done with her, I said quietly, she's going to wish she'd never heard the name Holloway. That night, I slept in my old bedroom at the cottage. Or tried to sleep. Mostly I lay awake, listening to the wind in the pines, thinking about Helen. She'd always been the moral compass in our marriage. When I'd get angry, she'd calm me down. When I'd want revenge, she'd talk about justice. Justice, I said to the darkness. Okay, Helen, we'll do this right. The next morning, I met John Chen at the Tim Hortons on Highway 400. He was in his 60s now, gray-haired but still sharp-eyed. We'd worked together on mining safety regulations after a series of accidents in northern Ontario. He'd been OPP then, investigating industrial incidents. Now, he ran their anti-corruption unit. I showed him everything. Jordan's files, the insurance policy, the offshore accounts, the evidence of Elena's fraud scheme. I told him about my suspicions regarding Detective Morrison in Toronto Police. John's face grew darker as he reviewed the documents. Robert, this is massive. If what you're showing me is legitimate, we're talking about multiple charges. Fraud, murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud, money laundering. It's legitimate. Jordan Kemp died gathering this evidence. And you want to set up a sting operation. I want to catch her in the act. Get her on tape discussing the murder plot. Make it so airtight that no corrupt cop can bury it. John was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, if we do this, we do it my way. Proper warrants, proper surveillance, no cowboy stuff. You're a civilian. And you're personally involved. That makes you a liability. I understand. I'll need to bring in my team. We'll need to wiretap Elena's phone, put surveillance on Derek Kane, monitor the offshore accounts. This will take time. How much time? A week. Maybe 2. Marcus might not have that long. John looked at me seriously. Then we need to make sure Marcus is somewhere safe. Can you get him out of Toronto without Elena knowing? I thought about it. Maybe, if I play it right. That afternoon, I drove back to Toronto. I went straight to Marcus's condo. He was home, working from his home office. He looked exhausted. Grandpa, you should be resting. The hospital. I'm fine, I said. The hospital was overreacting. But I need to talk to you about something. We sat in his living room. Modern furniture, IKEA prints on the walls. This was supposed to be his future, his life with Elena. It was all built on lies. Marcus, I need you to do something for me without asking questions. He frowned. What? I need you to go to the Sudbury office for a week. Tell work it's about the Nickel Basin Pension Fund account. Tell Elena you have to handle it in person. Grandpa, I can't just leave town. You're sick. And Elena's coming back from Montreal tonight. Elena's not in Montreal. His face changed. What? I pulled out my phone and showed him the Instagram post. Elena in Turks and Caicos with another man. While Marcus thought she was working, he stared at the photo for a long time. His hands started shaking. I don't understand. I need you to trust me. There's more going on here than you know. But right now, I need you to be safe. I need you to go to Sudbury. Stay at the Travelodge by the Science Center. Use cash. Don't tell anyone where you are, especially not Elena. Grandpa, what's happening? I wanted to tell him everything, but John Chen had been clear. The fewer people who knew about the sting operation, the better. If Marcus confronted Elena, she might run. Or worse, she might accelerate her timeline. I'll explain everything in a week, but please, Marcus, trust me. Go to Sudbury. He looked at me with his father's eyes, Thomas's eyes. Does this have anything to do with the money I borrowed from you? Yes. He closed his eyes. I knew something was wrong. The development company, it stopped returning my calls. Elena kept saying it was fine, that it was just administrative delays. But I had this feeling. He opened his eyes. She's been lying to me. Yes. About how much? Everything. That evening, Marcus packed a bag and drove north. He called Elena and told her work was sending him to Sudbury for urgent client meetings. She'd acted disappointed, said she'd just landed back in Toronto from Montreal. She'd see him when he got back. The lies came so easily to her. Over the next week, John Chen's team worked fast. They got warrants for Elena's phone records, her bank accounts, Derek Kane's communications. They put physical surveillance on both of them. They interviewed Dorothy Chen and the other fraud victims. They built an airtight case, but they also discovered something that made my blood run cold. Derek Kane had been asking questions at parking garages near Marcus's condo. Specifically, he'd been asking security guards about camera blind spots. He'd been preparing. We need to move now, John told me on day 6. Kane's getting ready to act. We can't wait any longer. What's the plan? We arrest them both simultaneously. Elena at her real estate office, Derek at his garage. We hit the offshore accounts, freeze everything. We coordinate with RCMP Financial Crimes Division and the CBSA. We make it impossible for her to run or hide assets. When? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. Elena was smart. She'd evaded detection for 2 years. What if she had a contingency plan? What if she'd already moved the money? What if Derek was just her patsy and the real killer was someone else? But I had to trust John Chen. Had to trust the system. The next morning, I was in an unmarked OPP van, parked outside Elena's Century 21 office on Yonge Street. John and his team were inside the van, monitoring communications. We could hear everything through the wire one of the agents was wearing, posing as a potential client. At Neo, Nola M. Exactly. The teams moved in. 6 officers entered Elena's office. At the same moment, another team raided Derek Kane's garage in Scarborough. I watched through the van's tinted windows as they brought Elena out in handcuffs. She was screaming about harassment, about lawyers, about false arrest. She looked genuinely shocked. Maybe she'd really believed she was untouchable. Derek Kane tried to run. He made it about 50 meters before the tactical team brought him down in the parking lot of a Canadian Tire. In his garage, they found detailed plans for sabotaging Marcus's Honda Accord, brake line diagrams, purchase receipts for tools, notes about timing and methods. They'd found Jordan Kemp's car in a storage locker Kane had been renting. The brake lines had been cut and poorly repaired to look like natural wear. The evidence was overwhelming. At the station, when Elena was shown the evidence, she tried to flip, blamed everything on Derek, said she'd been coerced, said she was a victim too. But the emails told a different story. So did the offshore accounts in her name. So did the life insurance policy, with her forged signature as Marcus's wife. Detective Morrison from Toronto Police showed up at the station, demanding to know why OPP was handling a case in his jurisdiction. John Chen arrested him on the spot. They'd traced the payments from Elena's offshore accounts to Morrison's vacation property. He'd been bought and paid for. The trial took 8 months. Marcus had to testify. It was brutal for him, watching video depositions where Elena discussed the best way to kill him, seeing emails where she called him the Mark and joked about his trust in her, learning that their entire relationship had been a con from day one. But he was stronger than I'd given him credit for. He survived it. We all did. Elena got life with no parole eligibility for 25 years. Murder in the first degree for Jordan Kemp. Attempted murder of Marcus. 11 counts of fraud. The judge called her one of the most calculating and remorseless criminals he'd ever sentenced. Derek Kane got 20 years for murder and conspiracy. Detective Morrison got 12 years for corruption and obstruction of justice. The offshore accounts were frozen and eventually distributed back to Elena's victims. Dorothy Chen got her retirement savings back. So did the others. It didn't erase what had happened, but it was something. Vanessa Paxton came to every day of the trial. She sat in the front row, Jordan's photograph pinned to her jacket. When the verdict was read, she finally cried. After it was all over, Marcus and I went back to the Muskoka cottage. It was summer by then. The lake was blue and calm. We sat on the dock with beers, watching the sunset. "I should have seen it," he said. "All the signs were there." She was a professional, Marcus. This is what she did. You're not the first person to be fooled by someone they loved. The money you gave me, the $200,000, I'm going to pay you back, every penny. Even if it takes me 20 years. I know you will. But that's not what matters. What matters? You're alive. That matters. Everything else is just money. We sat in silence for a while. A loon called across the water, the sound Helen had always loved. "Grandpa, when you checked yourself into the hospital, you weren't really sick, were you?" I took a long drink of beer. I needed to know how she'd react. I'd found the papers. I knew something was wrong. I just needed to see what she'd do when she thought she had an opportunity. And when she posted that photo from the Caribbean, I knew she'd failed every test of human decency. Marcus laughed, a bitter sound. "I married a monster. You made a mistake. We all do. What matters is you learned from it." What did I learn? That trust has to be earned. That love without character is just manipulation. That sometimes the people we need to be most careful around are the ones who seem to want us most. I looked at him, but also that family is real. That there are people who will fight for you, who will catch you when you fall. You almost died setting that trap for her. I was never really dying, though my performance was pretty good. Your blood pressure was through the roof. Patricia, the nurse told me. You could have had a real heart attack from the stress. Worth it. We finished our beers as the sun touched the horizon. Marcus stood up, stretched. "I'm going to sell the condo. Too many bad memories. Maybe get a place closer to the lake, closer to here. That would be good. And Grandpa, thank you for believing something was wrong, for investigating, for saving my life. That's what family does." That night, after Marcus went to bed, I walked down to the dock alone. The stars were out, brilliant against the black sky. No light pollution this far from the city. Helen and I used to lie on this dock and identify constellations. "We got her," I said to the stars. To Helen, "We got justice." The wind rustled through the pines. Somewhere across the lake, a loon called again. I'd learned something from all this, though I wasn't sure it was a pleasant lesson. I'd learned that evil can wear a beautiful face, that predators walk among us, charming and skilled, that the worst betrayals come from the people we let closest. But I'd also learned that good people fight back, that evidence and patience and careful planning can defeat even the most cunning criminal, that the system, for all its flaws, can still work. And I'd learned that love, real love, is about protection, about vigilance, about paying attention when something feels wrong. Marcus was safe now. That was all that mattered. Elena was in prison where she belonged. Jordan Kemp's death had been avenged. The fraud victims had been made whole. I walked back to the cottage. Through the window, I could see Marcus sleeping on the couch, finally at peace. Tomorrow, we'd go fishing. We'd make coffee on the old propane stove. We'd sit on the dock and not talk about betrayal, or murder, or trials. We'd just be grandfather and grandson, family, together in the place that had always been our sanctuary. The cottage that Elena had never seen. The place she'd never touched with her lies. Our place. Helen's and mine. Marcus's and mine. The place where the Holloway family survived. And that, in the end, was victory enough.